Okay,
Good morning,
showing.
everybody. Good morning. This is Midas Ramet. Pawal, you want to just kick us off here?
Yeah, thank you guys for joining this session. We believe with Mudasa and SecCom team that this is really good to share with you our story with software bill of materials, especially in the context of Log4j vulnerability that Heather mentioned at the opening session. So this will be a really good example of how you can handle with the management of what are the components of your software. And we can see this is a really industry standard that is coming up, and Mudasar is our leader for this topic. So thank you, Mudasar, for preparing all the contents, and the stage is yours.
Thank you, Pawal. So I just wanted to kind of set the context, right? So we all want software transparency. If you're a developer shop, you want to know what are you bringing in from open source or other vendors to put together your product for your end customer. So you want transparency. End customers who's going to use your product, they want transparency. So the transparency is all over, but part of the transparency is, do we know what we're using? And when we build software, we build capabilities, right? And from a security perspective, an adversary is going to use the same capabilities that's offered in the software to design their attacks. So I brought some examples here on this slide just to set the context that we can be part of community who puts a stop to Spire being used as a conduit to attack end customers. And I think one way to bring that visibility is that let's look at few of the things that happened recently, like SolarWinds. Earlier, before we started recording the session, we talked about SolarWinds. And here in, the adversaries try to get in, and we don't know exactly how they broke in, either through a third-party supplier to SolarWinds, maybe brute force attack. Somehow they became, they came into the production pipeline for SolarWinds software, especially Orion. And from there, they were able to go to anybody who was using the next update of Orion. That got downloaded to all the customers, and rest of the story, right? So they were sitting there collecting data from different customers. It's a similar story with Mimecast. Mimecast does email security and some other services for Office 365 clients. Similar story here. You lost your keys and customer database, and a lot of damage was created. I'll give you another example, like this company Ledger. They make cryptocurrency wallets. They were hacked. Their keys and their customers' contact information was compromised, and from there, 3-4 different kind of attacks were created. Some were simply using the contact information to break into customers' wallets. In other cases, they actually innovated. They started making fake ledger devices that they were selling over the internet to other folks. And people who bought it, basically they were buying Trojan. They put it on their computer when they were trying to use their brand new ledger device, and they lost everything. So there are so many different ways. One last example, it's not a attack or adversarial use, but not knowing that you have Log4j vulnerability in your network, you can't sleep at night. You have to know what you are using in your network, what is on your network, how it's behaving, and part of that comes from that transparency. And we in open source community, and anybody else who's building the software is part of that chain. And we want to make sure that we understand that we have ability to at least minimize this by bringing transparency. There's also another trend that I wanted to kind of highlight here. The open source software has grown in recent year, and there is this last year's figures over here on this slide show there's a 73% growth in downloads. Almost 6 million new versions were added just the last year. 37 million OS open source components are available. So that means we're building a lot of software with already built out components. So there's a lot of reuse of components also in this mix. But this last line should be a wake-up call. There's pretty much 650% year-over-year increase in cyber attack, which they use open source communities and that pipeline to get to the end customer. There's also a lot of focus from governments and security agencies. Few examples just in last year, and this is a 2021 figure where back in February, the first executive order by US President came out. It was about securing the America's supply chains. And it did mention the products and services that we use. Then in May, there was another executive order. And now you can see between, February and May, 2 executive orders coming in, looking at the supply chain. But the second executive order also focused on SBOM. And they kind of, the whole section over the software capability that government is buying, software composition analysis, and having the knowledge of what you have on your network was kind of pointed out. And when you look across Europe, in the UK, there's an initiative by National Center for Cybersecurity around cyber resilience. They are looking ways to protect their supply chains. There was a report out, I think it was 21, where ANISA, European Cybersecurity Agency, looked into supply chain attacks, and their recommendations were also focusing on some sort of inventory, custody management, and the recommendation to development organization and user organization to look into what is the bill of material for the products or services that you're using. So, you may ask, when is the right time to implement software bill of materials in your network? And I would say, we're probably a bit late. You could have done this a year ago or 2 years ago, but you cannot find an excuse for not saying now is the right time to implement software bill of material in the development organization, or even if you are an operation or user organization in your use cases. Because right now, we have ISO standard for bill of materials. This year or sometime in late summer, ISO recognized SPDX version 221 as an ISO standard for communicating bill of materials in the software world. If you look around, there are close to probably 30 or 40 different companies who are offering capabilities to generate software bill of materials. And then there's a user demand. We just talked about a lot of these adversarial action that happened in recent years. And as recent as Log4j instance, people want to know, do I have this in my network? Am I exposed to it? And then governments are coming down through certain actions like US President's executive order. And the LFN CI knows about it. LFN CI is being engaged with us during this research for software bill of materials in ONAP case. Previously, they had tried a pilot when standards weren't specified. So I would say there is no excuse left now that we shouldn't implement software bill of materials. We got the technology, we got the demand from our consumers, and we got the standards, and we got the software, and we have know-how within our organization to support it.
And
That's
I said I was going to be quiet. I am going to just jump
sure.
in really quickly. Like, just the time is now. Like, it's sometimes easy to say, like, oh, it's coming and I might do it wrong. And
Right,
basically what you're saying is, no, we've got the standards. And then sometimes there's the, oh, I didn't do it in time. Ugh. I
right.
mean, hell, I'm doing that right now with my physical therapy, right? Like, because yesterday I didn't do my physical therapy, so I didn't do it right, so I won't do it today. It's you have to get over sometimes that emotional barrier, which sometimes is a little hard in a corporate environment if you're talking to execs, but it's, I don't know. So you didn't do it yesterday. It doesn't mean you can't do it today. It's always right now is right now, and you always have the opportunity to start the path upon which you want to walk.
Exactly. So I think there are a lot of benefits to developers too, right? So I have worked in the development side, and I've also worked from the user or operation side with service providers in large organization. But the benefit that it brings to both producers and consumer, especially with transparency, right? We don't buy food without looking at the food label anymore, right? When we're looking at the our medicines and other stuff, we always look at it. And now, as with the software, we can see there are more benefits, right? So when you have risk management job from operations perspective, or as a leader of your organization, you have to map what cyber threat intelligence is telling you to what you have. And software itself is an asset from a consumer perspective. Software is also a tool. So you want to protect your asset and your tooling, and you have to know what you got, right? It's you can do this mapping if you have inventory on hand. And in the past, when the software came out of a software shop, there wasn't a whole lot of information other than release notes. So you can dig through it, you can build your own. But in recent years, there's been progress. Now you can take a look at the new development methodologies. They're putting info YAML files, POMs. So there's a lot of information. You could do it manually, sit down and build a software bill of material with your development leaders. But now software, you have this capability automated and available in the software. It can also help you look before you even bring the software in your organization as a consumer. And in our case, as a Linux Foundation developers of the software, you may be bringing in software binaries that you need to use to build the final product. You can bring those in. You can look at their bill of materials before you even put it in your internal repo. And then the final couple of lines are, you may have compliance requirement coming in. I can tell my experience with US government is it's the huge segment for any software vendor or product vendor, be able to sell it to US government. And a lot of companies, large or small organization, they usually have an entire section in their organization dedicated for sales and support to US government. And that's the market that's already putting requirements in their RFPs, where they're telling their vendors, in order for you to sell it to us, you need to provide what is the granular inventory in that product. And finally, a little bit of we're looking at these days, a lot of focus on 5G and 5G automation. So this could play a big role. If you have inventory of what you have in your network, then you can do different kind of pricing scheme or service differentiation when you sell the service to the end customer. So there's a lot of upside. I don't see any downside, so I didn't build any PowerPoint slides to tell you why you shouldn't do it. So a little bit of what's in it, right? So there is an extended version. National Telecom, NTIA folks have worked getting proposals and feedback from the industry, and they came up with these recommendations this summer, where they say, well, if you want to start a journey, let's start with some minimum fields, get your systems automated, so start populating this, and there's an extended version of what kind of information and metadata you can collect. So in a minimum, if you want to produce bill of material, you should have supplier's name in there. You should have component name in there. You should have the version number in there. Any other unique identifiers in there. And that could be, for example, your SHA hash on. You can put that in there. You can also indicate dependencies between one component and another component. And then it also allows you to indicate who created the bill of material. I think the custody part and assurance part requires, we want to know, am I looking at a legitimate bill of material file? And then some time relevance. All of these things can come into play when you're looking at, do I have the latest, greatest? Or if somebody provide intelligence that certain vulnerability was found in a particular version, then all this information will come into play. And it also recommends that you should be able to nest. So your final, like in this example, and this is right out of NTIA documentation, that your final product, like Acme application version 1.1, will include Bingo, will include Bob's browser, and the Bob's browser may have been built with using Carol's compression engine. So it can create nested bill of materials. So a lot of options available. 3 of these were considered. There's a Cyclone DX format started by OWASP community. Initially, it was more focused on the web applications or web-based applications. There's a SWID ISO standard that provides a lot of information, but SPDX format, which is also a Linux Foundation project, was standardized. So when we looked at these different standards, we looked at Cyclone DX. Cyclone DX format is supported in one of our Linux Foundation tool called Nexus Scanner. It will produce an inventory of binaries in Cyclone format. That's native capability. But because SPDX has been standardized for communicating inventory for software by ISO, so we went with that. So what's in it? When we ran a pilot on our, I think it's called SO, Service Orchestrator. So when you run a BOM function in your pipeline, usually it's when you're ready to put your release out in a repo, and there's no more action required beyond that in software development lifecycle. So you'll run an SBOM. SBOM file is a text file that will be generated by running the tool on your code, your binary, or your container. In this case, SO, we looked at the snapshot of the software, and on the top, it tells you which version you are using. SPDX folks went beyond to make sure that when you use SPDX, it's Creative Commons license on it. You own your data, you own your documentation. There is no sort of tie back to a vendor or producer of the SPDX technology. And then it tells you what is the document name, document namespace. It becomes more unique, that namespace, because now you can see the hash in it. And it also shows you how it was created. So the creator field can be a tool. It could be an individual or an organization. And because we're using automated, so it's a tool base, but you could just manually hand create this. And it also gives you the timestamp when it was created. Looking at, so I'm going to speed up a little bit here. I think I only have 7 minutes left, but gives you a sort of taste of what you're going to see in there. So here's the package presentation for representation for SO scan. You see the version here. We are looking at SO as an organization. Ideally, you can configure to show LFN ONAP in this case. Then there is a download location. Usually it is a download location if you're delivering through web delivery or FTP delivery. There's a checksum. By default, it does SHA-1, but there are 4 other options that you could add checksum to it. And that's the checksum of your BOM document. Then you have other metadata information that you can include. Here you see no insertion. SPDX standards are pretty flexible on it. If you tried and you couldn't get that information, you can present as a no assertion. Or if you purposely decided not to provide that information, you can also use this. So this is our first pass. And then here is your relationship, right? So it will give you a relationship map that the SO package has a bunch of other packages that make up the SO application, and it will list those with the right versions in there. And then each package itself will have similar information. What's the package name? What's the version? Where do you download? What are the licenses? You can do concluded license, which means that if you use somebody else's product that was licensed and you assume the license responsibility, you can add concluded or inherited, what in some cases, and other information on it. So when we compare what we're getting out of SPDX against NTIA minimum recommended fields, we're pretty much getting what NTIA recommended. And part of their initial recommendation, again, kind of repeat what Amy and other have already said. They say, hey, there's no good time to start. Right now is the good time to start. So if anybody's looking at doing extended bill of material, yes, they can, but they shouldn't wait until the extended bill of material is available or version 3.0 for SPDX or ISO is going to come out. I think the good time is we start now. So what do you need to do? Not a whole lot, right? It's going to be an automated self-release task, which will be called in once all your scanning, reviewing is done, and you're going to deposit your final release software in the repo for publishing. That's when this will run. It will create the bill of material. And since it's automated, so any changes you make to your software, you will have a new bill of material. So all you have to do is at this point, just look into which pilot project you want to do. You want to understand where all these fields are coming from in your own pipeline, whether it's a Jenkins, Maven, or some other tool giving you that information for that field. Build those out. So you engage LFN IT team, release engineering team, who will help you install that script into your CI pipeline. And that's all. There is no maintenance beyond once you fix your CI task. There is no maintenance on it. It's automated. I'm sure there will be some updates in the future where you might have to look at version 3 of SPDX to see what additional capability you get. I think by reading what they were trying to put it in as an extended bill of material information, there's a lot of stuff that we as a developers, as well as we as a consumer or security risk management folks need that, right? But we shouldn't wait that long. So if you wanted to, you could run this. We gave it a try. My colleague Sean actually pulled together the repo, downloaded the repo outside Linux Foundation. We weren't sure if it's going to cause any issue. So it created a new environment, a new repo, put the tool on it, and we ran this. And it's harmless. The only thing you will add is an SPDX BOM file to your repo. That's about it. With that, I would say I'll stop now. I have in the file some references. I will add some more the stuff that I picked up during my research and this proof of concept that we ran. I'll put those together, put it in the PDF and make it available to everybody. And I'll stop there to see if anybody has any questions.
If there are any questions, folks should be able to unmute yourselves, or you can type it into the chat window.
And I especially encourage questions from folks in our other projects. I know that this was very much sort of like how to take it from ONAP to your specific projects and communities, but are there tactical questions or strategic questions that folks maybe, if you don't feel comfortable asking them, may I ask you to make yourselves comfortable asking them, because this is good work and we really need to see it taken across many of our projects. So if you don't have questions now and you'll have questions when you start implementing, that's fine. But if there are tactical questions, please speak up.
There might be technical advice. So guys, I think that this is good to start small, right? So as Mudassar showed, we start with the one of the projects, right? To have a like pilot or prototype to see how it works and so on, and even to start with the basic SBOM, right? As Mudassar suggested, and then when the extended version is on air, then to extend it and to make it like more complex, right?
Yeah, and it's automated. So there is, you know, when we do bring new capability and new initiatives, usually the development side's always saying like, you know, I already got a lot on my plate. So in this case, for SBOM, there isn't anything that's going to be added to your plate. All you have to do is work with LFN IT, put a plan together, implement it, and just review the output files. And that's where you'll realize that once you start looking at the field, you may even see that you can make an improvement of your own software quality in your integration efforts by just looking at the BOM itself. I think it's a lot more useful than just providing an inventory. There's a lot of security aspects that you may be bringing in. And we only talked about creating SBOM. There is another aspect of ingesting SBOM. So you can clean up all our repos where you're using open source software that is not developed by your own specific team. So you can create SBOM as the software comes into your enclave. You slam an SBOM on it in your repo. Now you have a good tracking of all the binaries and dependencies that you're bringing into your final product. So it's going to help. If you guys have any questions, you can reach out to Powell or myself. We'll make ourselves available. And let's see if in this quarter, next month or two, we can get most of Linux Foundation projects on this.
Yeah, and maybe there's an interesting topic for the next kind of session. Next, maybe physical event is like managing SBOMs, right? This could be also interesting topic to cover. So stay tuned, guys. If you have any questions, we are here to help you. And thank you for this session. Mudassar, thank you guys for joining us, and have a great break. And please join next sessions today and this week.
Thank you, Powell.
Appreciate
Thank you.
giving the opportunity, Kenny and Linux Foundation, for myself and Mita to be part of this journey.
Yep. Thank you so much, Mudassar. As being a plenary session, I will upload the recording for it once it's rendered. The next session that we have, we've got two things in parallel. The first will be the EUAG, which will be on this bridge starting at 15:30. And then the next in parallel with that will be the continuation of the magma sessions on the other bridge. So I'm going to go ahead and end this now, and we will see you back here in about a half hour. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.